there anything you don't do? He can't hear it.
Good afternoon, this is David O, and thank you for joining me once again, a beautiful Tuesday here in Philadelphia. And thanks for joining us wherever you're from in this region. We are sitting here with three wonderful guests. Dave Henderson, who is a graduate of West Point, served our country in the U.S. Army, and is now president of the board for the Philadelphia Global War on Terror Memorial for the Iraq, Afghanistan, those who served there. And we are joined by Jack Ferracchio. He is with the band Adventure Lost, and we're going to hear not only a clip of his music, but he's going to perform a little acoustic unplugged live here. And then we'll be talking to Rich Simpson. He is the chairman of the 82nd Division Airborne, let me say that again, the 82nd Airborne Division Association Hajdack-Mokan Philadelphia chapter. And he'll be telling us about, the 82nd Airborne, what they do, and how you can get involved, whether you're airborne or not. But first, let me thank our show's sponsors, Weinerman Pain and Wellness. They do a wonderful job of making sure that anyone who is hurt, injured, however, can get back to as full a life as possible. They're in Philadelphia at 100 South Broad Street, 18th floor, so check them out. If their services are something that you need, they do a fantastic job. Last week, we were talking to Grammy-nominated engineer and producer David Ivory. You know, he has been involved with so many groups like The Roots, Patti LaBelle, so many others. But he's also the chair of the Philadelphia Music Industry Task Force, and he was just updating us on what's going on in Philadelphia. Then we talked to Jimmy DeSaint, CEO of DeSaint Entertainment, author, artist, entrepreneur, and so many other things. Just an incredible story of a guy who was talented, made some mistakes, ended up with a 10-year federal sentence, and came out with already author of books and has turned his life around and done wonderful things. And we spoke to Debbie Rafferty. She's the president of the Wild Bill Guarnere Memorial Fund. They have their golf outing coming up, and she's the granddaughter of Wild Bill. Wonderful person. She was joined by her father, Gene Guarnere. And so if you want, check them out, Wild Bill Guarnere Memorial Fund. Anyway, this week, we're going to talk to a good friend of mine, David Henderson. He is the Director of Operations for Mission First Group. Is that right?
You got
okay,
it.
Listen, I just want to make sure Dave's with us. And he is also a veteran, served in Iraq and Afghanistan. And he's a graduate of Roxborough High School and West Point, the U.S. Military Academy. And he is the founder of an organization, a group of folks that are putting together funds and whatnot to create here in Philadelphia a memorial for those who served and died in the Middle East. Dave, thanks for joining us.
Sure. Thanks, Councilman. Thanks. Good to be here.
Oh, hey, it's great having you. Now you just had a fantastic event. Rich was there. I was there. Tell us about that event.
Sure. So we, so the board of directors got together, and we figured it'd be a great opportunity to have everyone come together at a beef and beer. And we didn't really expect it to be that successful. So a couple folks on the board, Paul Fisher, retired major from the Marine Corps, Steve Philbaum, retired lieutenant, which is an 03 in the Navy, Brian Lentz, former major U.S. Army, Judge Pat Dugan, and then Tim Wynn. So we've got a really good, pretty good, impressive board. So we started to get this thing together for the beef and beer, and it just sort of exploded. I mean, the outpouring of support from the community was pretty overwhelming, to the point where it got to a point where we had to kind of turn off ticket sales. We had, I think, close to 400 or 500 people show up on Saturday. Right. It was a great event. Really, really good.
Yeah, I certainly enjoyed it, and boy, the place was packed. It was the National Guard Armory on Southampton Road up there, Roosevelt Boulevard, Southampton Road, and just really a lot of really very supportive folks supporting the military, and it was great to see. What is your goal? How much money are you trying to raise, and what are you trying to do with that money?
So we're getting there. I think I'd have to check the books with the treasurer. I think we're at about 120 or 130,000 raised right now.
Mm-hmm.
The idea really is to just create a memorial for the 288 families that lost a loved one during the global war on terror. So that started in 2001 in Afghanistan, 2003 in Iraq, and it's 288 families from Pennsylvania that did not have a loved one come home. So across the state of Pennsylvania, there's no statewide memorial just yet. So we would like to have that placed down by the Korean and Vietnam Memorial, so that the loved ones and the families have a place to memorialize those loved ones and to grieve, or to be able to recognize the sacrifice that was made.
Yeah, and for those listening, what Dave Henderson's talking about is putting a memorial right there at right near Penn's Landing, where there is one block kind of dedicated to the Korean War Memorial, and right across the street, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. And it is so important, to have these memorials. Certainly, anybody understands that when you bury someone you love, you want to mark that piece of ground. It's important for folks. But when you lose that many young people in war, which is a vicious way to lose people, but ultimately that their lives not be lost in vain, we honor them, we remember them, we provide a place for us to remember the cost of freedom and other things. And so this is a wonderful thing that you're doing. You have a lot of support. How did you come about, getting this together? Because I'll say, I was talking to, Chief Justice Ron Castile and a couple other folks, that Vietnam Veterans Memorial we have started at a table with some beers, four guys talking about how there is nothing, that is there to remember, those who served and did not come back home. And they raise the money and tell people, look, most of these memorials were not paid for by the government. It was a bunch of regular Americans who got together and started, the idea, raising the money, getting the designs, and they made it all happen. So in this case, how did this come about?
I'd probably have to convene with the board to get
the full story. Right, but in your case, how did you get involved?
Well, the way I remember it, you might forget, Councilman, but I had transitioned out of active duty in 2013, and then I don't know, 2014 at some point. I think we might have been at the American Legion on Frankfurt Ave, kicking around some beers, and
maybe Rich was there.
This I think it came from you, actually. So we had talked about originally doing this at City Hall, or doing it in the square there, and then that was kind of like, that might be difficult to get through. There's a lot of traffic that goes in and out of there. And you mentioned, well, why don't you talk to some of the folks on the Vietnam Memorial Board, and then it just kind of kicked off from there. And I, like any other veteran, I reached out to the folks that were close to me. So Judge Dugan was one of the first. Brian Lentz, great mentor to me. Steve Philibon, my first boss. Paul Fisher, who was going through the MBA program with me at Penn State. We just said, hey, let's get together and see what happens. And it just took off from there. Almost immediately.
Did you have anyone in particular in mind, or several people, or just not even any certain persons? What was on your mind when you started thinking about this memorial?
So Philadelphia, particularly, we've had a lot of soldiers and service members go overseas and not come back home, and there's too many really to name just right here. A close family friend is the Convoy family. So Adam served in Iraq in the Marine Corps as a Lance Corporal, and he did not come home. Travis Mannion was Paul Fisher, if I remember correctly, Paul, and my apologies here, I think Travis was Paul's roommate during college.
And the wonderful work they do, Travis Mannion Foundation,
Very
in
impressive.
memory, yes, and it has helped so many.
So all of those just kind of collectively, we, everyone, I think at some point has been touched by a loss overseas, and we didn't want to miss anybody. So it's really how it came about.
So what is the concept? What is the idea of this memorial?
So we have, we'll be putting together a design committee soon. Yeah.
Because I saw a picture of something.
So we have some ideas we've kicked around just internally, but we want to open it up to all of the families and to have a more robust design committee. I mean, all of us sit around the table, we think, this looks good, but the idea is to have as much input as possible and make it a group effort. So those designs will be pushed out to a lot of families, a couple hundred, and then we'll be having a separate design committee that is autonomous from the board of directors to say, hey, here's what we believe is best. But the design unveiled on Saturday evening at the Beef and Beer is just a semicircle with all of the names of each service member who were killed in action, and then bordering them on the left and right side, it's called, depending on the service, it's called a Jersey barrier, a Texas barrier. It's very symbolic of the counterinsurgency type of the warfare over there, because on the highway, to prevent IED blasts from catching too many vehicles or personnel, you have a barrier that's made of concrete that goes up about 8 to 10 feet. And so we thought that was very fitting to have on the, as a protected barrier on the memorial. And then a plaque on the front for those that are supporting.
Right. Well, how can people get involved? How can they support or help or contribute to this cause?
So we're proud to say, I think I've lost count at this point, but we have over 2,000 individual donors to this. So people have been very generous and helpful. We have a very basic website. It's gwotmemorial.org. GWOT is spelled GWOT memorial.org. And on there you can get $1, $5. You can write to the board and say, hey, we'd like to see this, or you will gladly welcome you to the next meeting. That's probably the best way. We have T-shirts available for purchase that help commemorate the memorial.
Yeah, listen, folks. If you have a fundraising idea, you're like, hey, listen, I could throw a little barbecue, invite some family and friends over, and we'd love to have someone come over. I think I could raise like $500, or I could raise $5,000. It doesn't have to be a huge number, but let the Dave and the board know, because this is also look. They died serving our country, and everyone has a stake in remembering, their sacrifice.
Sure. Yeah.
Now, I got to say that I met Dave one day when he was in high school. I was speaking at Roxborough High School.
That's right. Yeah.
And I met a bunch of kids. Like I think they were seniors. Were you a senior?
Oh boy, it's been over a decade now.
Something like that, and so who would have guessed? But years later, I'm going to Korea, and on my Facebook, apparently Dave had become Facebook friends with me, and he said, I'm serving in Korea. Well, last thing I knew, you were in high school, and next thing I know, you're a West Point graduate and a lieutenant or captain at the time.
Lieutenant in Korea.
Yeah, in Korea, and so we got together in Korea.
That's right. Yeah, that was so I think that was probably 2009. I was living at Camp Casey up near the border at that point, and I just saw that I think you and his son were coming over with the kids.
Yeah,
I
might have had one, maybe two. I lost count. I have 4 now, but
I remember Hannah being real small, but I feel like so.
Yeah.
And I think we all sat down and had some Gipsol that night. It was a good day.
Yeah, and so we've been in touch, and you've from Korea. Eventually you went to Afghanistan and then to Iraq, I believe.
Yep. I had the chance to serve 2 tours in Mosul, and then after that a tour in Afghanistan, and then came out of active duty in 2013. I'm still in the reserves. It's tough to, I think most of us can. Once it's a part of you, it's really tough to let go. So I did completely get out for about a year, and then I just kind of missed being around soldiers, missed having that sense of purpose. It's nothing much like it. So.
Right. Okay, so. I remember that there were some pretty serious incidents that occurred. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about some of those?
Sure. So, well, in Afghanistan, it was not a. So we were serving in Coast Province, which is 6 miles end to end. I mean, to the not comical, but I deliberately left a map in our operations center that did not even have Coast Province listed on the map as of 2005, because at that point it was just to the U.S. forces. It was sort of listed as I was part of Pakistan, but it's just to tell you the ambiguous nature of what's defined over there. It's clear now, at least we think it is. But 6 miles end to end, I mean, to the point where we were using Pakistani rupees in the marketplace. The Afghan central government really had no reach into this area. It's a very porous border. Miram Shah, which is 30 clicks over the border, was really a great hideout for the Taliban and all of their supporters. So they would come across the border back and forth. But we, in the first 30 days, we had a suicide bomber, unfortunately, that killed 3 of our soldiers and a linguist. And that kind of defined the momentum for the rest of the tour. And that was we had 8 months to go, and that happens unfortunately pretty frequently. At least 2013 timeframe, 2012 timeframe. So that was Afghanistan in a nutshell. It's greatly different now. A lot of the forces have been taken out of the provinces and put in more regional nodes where you have 5,000 or 10,000 troops on a base versus. I was living on a base with 40 of my guys and 200 Afghans, basically on the Hajdack border.
Right.
So it was different times. So.
Yeah, well, every war is different, and it's also problematic that they're so different from the last one that you kind of go in there and have to write the playbook all over again.
Sure. Yeah.
And the politics and everything else, but it's tough duty, and thank you so much for what you're doing for those who have lost their lives, serving our country and doing their duty.
Sure, and I appreciate you giving us the opportunity to come on here and speak council, and it's good. I mean, this is it's a great project with purpose, and it's gonna happen. So we're really honored to be able to do it.
All right, well, listen, everybody, Global War on Terror, GWAT, and check them out. Google them, Philadelphia GWAT, and do what you can do to help out this great cause. And stay tuned, because we will be coming right back after this commercial break with Adventure Lost, a rock music band here in Philadelphia. Okay, and we are back. We were talking to Dave Henderson. He served in Iraq, Afghanistan, and he is the president of the GWAT Memorial. GWAT stands for Global War on Terror, and they are raising money to build a memorial here in Philadelphia to honor those who served and died in Iraq and Afghanistan. And so check them out on Google, on your computer, find them, and if you can, make a contribution or get involved. There's many ways to help out. But now we're going to be talking to a young man, Jack Farracchio. He is, I'd call him the lead, but I know that gets controversial, but the lead of a great rock band, Adventure Lost. And they are the 2017 PHL Live Center Stage rock category finalists. There's 5 finalists, but they're one of the finalists out of so many submissions. Really some fantastic judges. Tommy Joyner from Milk Boy, Brent Porsche from WMMR, and I was just talking about Dave Ivory, the Grammy-nominated engineer and producer. And so to be selected by those guys is really quite an honor. Jack, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to be here.
Hey, tell us about your band. I mean, I know there's something going on with you, right? How would you describe your band and your music?
Oh, man. We are relentless when it comes to music. It's a need. It's a real necessity.
Okay.
When we started to play music together, we knew that we did not want to be just playing covers or playing songs in the arrangements that it's very standard, like you have verse, chorus, and follow the formula. We thought that it would just be fun to break the rules, bend the rules, see how far we could get away with progressive, unusual ideas while still keeping them to be catchy and relatable and approachable.
Right.
And we're getting away with it so far.
Okay.
So,
now two
yeah.
questions.
Sure.
First of all, who is we? Because there's how many of you guys in your band? 3?
Yes, Adventure
Okay.
Lost is 3 people. It is myself, Jack Faracchio, I play guitar and I sing. We have Larry Yaccio. Man, he killed me for not pronouncing his name right. Known him for like 3-4 years now. We have John Sellers on the bass.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we do the power trio thing, and it works out. We try to make it as full as possible, and I think it's working out so far. Yeah.
Now the name Adventure Lost. What does it mean? Where did it come from? How did you guys come up with that name?
So brainstorming, basically.
Okay.
There were so many ideas floating around here or there. You know, different word combinations.
I know. You know what? In the know with David.
Yeah, I find myself making a Facebook post, and I was like, I'm going to be on a radio show called In the Know with David O. Radio show, and I was like, wait a minute, do we need to do that? But no, Adventure Lost was just it mirrors a theme that is very common in our band, which is juxtaposition, contrasting, and so you have adventure, and you have all the boundless opportunities that are in life. All the possibilities that you can follow with your career, with all facets of life, really. But then we put the word lost in there, because it conveys a sense of urgency, conveys a sense of possibly regret. And just me personally speaking, regret is one of the it's a motivating factor in the sense that regret is something you can never take back, and you often regret the things that you do not do more than the things you do. So with a band, we are active, we are always playing, always writing, always staying consistent, and always pushing the boundaries, because we don't want to regret anything. Yeah.
Well, we're going to actually let the listeners listen to a clip of your music, and this song is called Istanbul.
Yes.
Now, how'd you come up with that title in the song?
So, back to the theme of contrast and juxtaposition. So, I spent some time in Istanbul. It was like a long weekend, basically, a very short time, a couple of years ago. And I was struck by how the contrasting, how profound the contrast was between the ancient history of that city, going back to Constantinople being a huge part in the just fundamental growth of civilization, really.
Right.
And then you have all these, modern careers and just the hustle and bustle of everyday modern life, living side by side with it. And the song contrasts those themes exactly. This very groovy part, this really crazy rock part, and then this really stressed out part. So it's combining all these things that can live in harmony, but have their own unique identity at the same time.
Well, we're going to check it out. This is a song, Istanbul, written by Jack Faracchio. All right, that is Istanbul, Jack Ferracchio and Adventure Lost.
Yes.
All right, fantastic. Now,
Thank you so much.
Now you are pretty well traveled, are you not?
I am, absolutely. I take it. It's one of the fundamental passions of my life to see new places, and I try to stay as active with that as possible. Yes.
And do you get inspiration for music when you travel?
Undoubtedly, I would say. I mean, our Adventure Lost has dozens upon dozens of songs written in the works, whatever, and I would say 60% of them at least are directly inspired from little memories on the road. Like, for example, like that Istanbul had memories of walking around Istanbul itself in the old city center, being surrounded by businessmen. There's other songs we have, walks in Copenhagen, one that directly references, bridges in Prague. Then you have, and then the fun thing is, when you get done a long trip of through 4, 5, 6 countries, just like I said, just on vacation, for a travel, when you get done, it all seems like one piece to you. It seems like one album, So the fun part is to write songs, write music that can unite that in the same sense. So you have one complete song, like Istanbul, for example, but then the verse may be inspired by a walk in Prague. The chorus goes to a dinner in Copenhagen, and then the riff part may be inspired by, I don't know, a night in Canada or something. And they all seem very unique and not really compatible. But when you if you see your whole trip as one idea, you try to package a song in that same way. And each part is individual, so you can remember your day in Copenhagen, your day in this, day in whatever. But then it all works together as one trip, and you can glean all the lessons from that as a whole.
Yeah, what do you try to share with your music? In other words, what motivates you to write music, lyrics, put it to notes, melodies, harmonies, and what are you trying to communicate with the person listening through your music?
So in 2 parts, I would say, to answer your question about the writing, what compels me to do that is, like I said, it's necessity. I'm not trying to say I'm special at all. I'm a normal dude. I really am. But there's just like we are compelled to, whistle along to a tune, or maybe walk in beat to something. If I'm walking on the street, I'm just walking, left, right, left, right. That's a rhythm. So sometimes my mind will just put a drum beat behind it. I'm like, oh, that sounds pretty cool. And then a melody's like, dun, 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 dun. And it's what? So it's just coming out, and it has to. And I have to satisfy that need, or else I'll just go crazy. And then conveying, and then the second part, which is what I want to communicate, is, and this may sound a little cliche, but just do it, man. Just be. So with our music, we try to be as purely and unadulterated us as possible. So when we have shows, we get to meet some fans, and we get to meet new people in our network. A lot of times we hear oh, I'm so glad you're doing this. You're playing shows. You're going out. You're living the life you want to do. I'm like, I'm not. I'm just doing what I want to do. As long as I don't encroach on anyone else's freedoms or harm anyone else. That's what we're really here, on earth to do. I feel, to grow and. Absolutely, learn.
It sounds like your music is kind of positive. Almost sounds like you're having a good time. You're appreciating everything that's happening to you and around you. You're expressing it through what you enjoy, music.
Absolutely, exactly. Positivity is it's an energy. It is a real force that you can choose to have your life involved with or not. You can be, for example, driving in traffic is my favorite example, and being around City Line Avenue where we are here, this is a great exhibit A for that. So if you're driving in traffic and you're just like, oh my god, car in front of me is not going, why are they not going?
That's called road rage.
Oh my god, we've all experienced that. I mean, come on, that's something we can all relate to.
All right, listen, pay attention, because he's going to tell you how to turn road rage into a happy melody.
All you do is you sit in your car and you're like, wait a minute, I'm traffic. The guy behind me is saying the same thing. Why isn't this guy going? What the heck is going on? So, can you control the traffic? What are you going to do? Are you going to drive through all the cars? Are you going to so you can control what you can control. What you can't control, just sit back and enjoy it. Because
that's very zen, man. Very zen.
I could apply it to any host of situations, So, and you find that if you are the only, picture yourself in a car on a jam on I-95, and you're the only one that's sitting there and calm and listening to the radio, listening to David O. You're like, wow, what a great show. and you're calm and you're sitting there and you're enjoying your life, and everyone around you is all infected by negativity and this group mind of like,
Right.
you know, frustration. You have like a superpower in that sense.
Yes.
You know, you're riding a wave of positivity.
For my two military friends here, and for you, I'll say it reminds me of the book of Bushido, where the philosophy of the samurai. It says you can run when it's raining, like a heavy rain. You can run from eve to eve trying to avoid the rain, but you're just going to get wet. So the samurai just steps out knowing he's going to get wet and just walks, towards his purpose.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Acceptance. You know,
Yes.
you accept that you're going to get wet, just like all that.
Now you were going to perform live with us. Jack's got his guitar out. This song is called "Go Away Now," another song that you wrote.
It is. It's an Adventure Lost original, absolutely.
Okay, well let's hear it.
All right. Speaking of positivity, the song's called "Go Away Now." It's not about going away now. I don't want to see you go away now. I don't want to see you go away now. So it is with love. So it is we'll never understand how we are exceptions and the most prepared. How it only feels most real when you are scared of how much you care and love. Now don't you dare leave me standing here. Don't you go away now, darling. I don't want to see you go away now. I don't want to see you go away now, 'cause I start to wonder just how long you'll stay. So it is with love, how it is we think we understand, how we are exceptions and the most prepared. Thinking no one else can possibly compare to how much I care for you. Now don't you dare leave me standing here. Don't you go away now, darling. I don't want to see you go away now. I don't want to see you go away now. 'Cause I start to wonder just how long you'll stay. I don't want to see you go away now. I don't want to see you go away now. As I start to wonder just how long you'll stay.
All right.
Whoa,
all
listen to that
right.
crowd.
Thanks to the technical expertise, we have applause. All right.
Wow.
Very good. Jack, where do people catch you?
All right, so you can catch me in traffic every morning. I'm just
Right.
So, Facebook.com, you can go to Adventure Lost, you'll find us. Our name's right there. That's for all our social media and show announcements and all news and everything. For music, iTunes, just type in Adventure Lost, you'll find us. You can also go to Spotify, Adventure Lost, or Bandcamp, whatever your preference is with music, you can find us. Type in Adventure Lost. And yeah, absolutely. We've got plenty of music out there and more coming every month.
All right. Well, best wishes to you. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
And listen, everybody, stay tuned. We'll be talking to Rich Simpson. He's the leader of the 82nd Airborne Division Association here in Philadelphia, Hajdack-Mokan chapter.
That was good.
All right, we are back. Thank you for tuning in and listening. Listen, we were, talking to Dave Henderson, the Global War on Terror Memorial that he and other veterans are involved with, and then we're just having a chat with Jack Ferracchio of Adventure Lost, and you can check them out. And let me say that if you're interested in today's show, or you missed actually hearing that conversation, go to www.dbam.com and you can check out In the Know with David O and get the podcast. Well, listen to all the shows. Anyway, I am here with a friend of mine. His name is Richard Simpson. We call him Richie, Rich Simpson. But anyway, he is the chairman of the Hajdack-Mokan Philadelphia chapter of the 82nd Airborne Division Association. And he actually enlisted in the Army in September 1968. Did his basic at Fort Bragg. He was what we call a medic. He went to San Antonio, Texas for his AIT. And then Fort Benning, Georgia for jump school, airborne. And then he served in Vietnam, L Company Rangers with the 75th Regiment. And then he returned to Fort Bragg, where he served in the 307th Medical Battalion, 82nd Airborne. And for the last 28 years, he has been a member of the Hajdack-Mokan chapter of the 82nd Airborne Division Association here in Philadelphia. And now, for the last umpteen years, we're trying to count earlier, he's been the chairman of the organization. Rich, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Well, listen, it's interesting to me because, we're talking a little bit about the L Company Rangers, and we have several members of the 82nd Airborne chapter here in Philadelphia that are Vietnam Company Rangers, E Company, and others.
Right.
And so how did you end up joining the 82nd Airborne chapter here in Philadelphia?
Oh, they had a party one time, and they said, "Oh, it's a bunch of paratroopers. You should go." I went to the run they had on Delaware Avenue with the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Society.
Right.
They were partying, having a good time. Next thing I knew, I was on a bus down to Fort Bragg, and we partied down there. Lost my voice partying with them, and I joined. Been a member ever since.
Oh, goodness. And that was 1990, right?
Yes.
But you got out of the military in 71, and so that's quite a while before you actually joined the organization.
Married with kids. Too busy.
And that's true of a lot of people, right? You come out the military, last thing you're thinking is like, hey, I just got out the military, I'll run over and join a veterans organization.
That's the last thing on your mind.
But obviously, for the last 28 years, you have, been involved, with the organization, and now being the chairman, you lead the organization.
Yeah, well, it's a bunch of us that lead it. The only thing I do is just organize it, but there's a lot of members in our association.
And for those who don't know what the organization does, what could you tell them about the chapter?
Well, we do memorials for any paratrooper that's passed away. We like to do everybody, but there's just not enough members. But we do all the parades: the St. Patrick's Day Parade, Irish Weekend down in Wildwood. We do the Veterans Day Parade. We do the memorials, the Korean Memorial, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. So wherever we're needed, we go. We do the Bridesburg Parade, do a number of parades.
And a lot of giving to community organizations. The chapter raises money.
Yes, we do.
And then gives it out to worthy causes.
100% of the money goes out. We have our own Wounded Warriors Fund, and every year we go to the Division Association, and we make sure 100% of that money is donated for Wounded Warriors.
And the 82nd Airborne's got the All-American, the AA distinctive shoulder patch there.
That's for All American.
Yep. All-American.
All-American.
And what's the story behind that?
Well, it started out that they realized, I think it was Patton that realized that everybody that was in that outfit was from a different state.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it became the All-American, and he called it the Guard of Honor.
Yes, and our friend Wild Bill Guarneri, he called it almost airborne, right?
Yeah, we called him some things too. Great guy.
Because there's a lot of friendly joking between military units and interbranch humor and
Right.
whatnot. But yeah, great guy. And so when you were in Vietnam, serving in Vietnam as an L Company Ranger. At a portion of the time, the 75th Regiment was attached to the 101st, another airborne unit recognized by their distinctive shoulder patch with the Screaming Eagle on it.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
They called it the Puke and Butcher.
Spoken like a true 82nd man.
Yep.
But the 82nd Airborne Division, the 82nd Airborne Division Association, which was established by an order of Congress, is open to any paratrooper.
Yes, it is. It doesn't matter what branch you're in, as long as you're a paratrooper, you can join our association.
Yeah, so we have some Navy SEALs, we have some, in the past we have, and we have, Rangers and, 173rd, 101st.
Marine
82nd,
Recon.
Yeah, Marine Recon, all sorts. Special Forces guys, all.
Oh yeah, like yourself.
Yeah, like almost Special Forces, right? So yeah, so anyone who jumped out of an airplane, at least legally, right? Can be a member of the 82nd Airborne.
You hear that, Dave?
I hear you.
Dave Henderson over there, yeah.
Round me up.
He's joining today. So one of the things that is important is that for veterans and especially for our younger veterans, they may not realize it as someone like yourself. Last thing you want to do is get involved with a bunch of veteran guys. But eventually, it's so important to connect and to have that camaraderie and that understanding. And so what would you say to the younger guys that are getting back from the Middle East and other things, or those who were, stateside, and, what would you say to them about joining the organization?
Well, people who join our organization, there's no war stories. We're not looking for anything. We try to get them to the right direction to get their benefits from the government, their VA benefits, and help out with other organizations, place to hang out with people they have things in common with,
Mm-hmm.
and have a few drinks together.
Yeah, well, it's certainly a lot of fun. I can say that personally because I've been a member for a number of years
Yes,
now.
you have.
And I enjoy the camaraderie and the goodwill and the good purpose of the veterans, and how through different walks of life people can come together for a common cause.
It's more like family anymore.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and also, I remember that we did a whole thing about sending care packages overseas to our active duty military.
Yeah, it gets harder now. You have to send it to an individual.
Mm.
You can't just send it in general anymore.
Oh, is that
it makes
right?
it harder, yes.
Yeah, that's.
And if Vietnam Veterans Memorial Society does more of it than we do.
Yes.
But we assist them. When they need help,
Mhm.
they call, we haul.
Right.
That's
Right. And that's another good part of the organization is, the honor guard is very distinctive with the red berets, and most of the veterans ceremonies will see the 82nd Airborne Honor Guard standing there with the flags, and
Yeah, we wear the World War II uniforms to honor those guys from World War II that were really
Mhm.
beginning of jumpers. I mean,
Right.
they tested all them shoes for us, so I like that.
Still, T10 still in use, I promise you. So
Dave Henderson says they're still using those parachutes.
That's right. Yeah.
Hey, where did the name, for our listeners, where did the name Hajdack-Mokan chapter come from?
Two of our World War II guys, they were with the 504, 82nd Airborne. True heroes in World War II.
Mm.
Taught the younger guys, like myself, when you first came in, how to have fun, how to enjoy life, and appreciate being a paratrooper.
Right. Yeah, so Henry Hajdack, and what was Ed Moken?
Ed
Moken, because then his son,
Roger Moken.
Roger Moken, who, by the way, if you were Father Judge hockey player. You'll know who Roger Mokan, the coach of the hockey team, served in Special Forces. He was a Green Beret in Vietnam. Was a longtime member of our chapter. And it was his father who's a namesake, Hajdack-Mokan, chapter 82nd Airborne. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I liked him. He was a good guy. And they put a nice plaque up on the wall
Right.
in memory of him.
And it's really it's interesting because it's the Vietnam veterans who really set the stage for how well we treat our military, those who have served when they return home. And the sad truth is that the Vietnam veterans did not receive that. In fact, they received the opposite. And so you guys have really made a point of ensuring that those who served, whether people agree or disagree with the politics of America or the war, that those who served are treated with respect and welcomed home.
Correct. We just want to make sure that they get their true benefits and any money that is needed to help them out. Or if we go there just for support, that's what we do.
Yeah, and so listen, Dave's grabbing the microphone.
Yeah, if I could say, I mean, oftentimes when we would come home from service, we would come into the airport, and it really was, I mean, Richie, it was a lot of the Vietnam Korean vets that would greet us at the airport, Bangor, Maine, or at Fort Dix, New Jersey, there'd be a line of Vietnam vets, and that really kind of set the stage. These guys would grab us one by one and say, hey, you need to be doing this, or take it from me 20 years ago, this is what we went through. I mean, it was really kind of, we were all struck by the amount of support from Vietnam Korean vets. Even as a kid, you grow up and those are the kind of guys you idolize.